I don't think people realize, people hate on the ANA and stuff like that, and for some good reasons. I would say there's good and bad soldiers. I think as an advisor, I think that was one of my biggest eye-opening things, is working with some of the guys and realize some of those dudes are straight patriots. Some of those dudes want to be there. They want to make their country better, and they want to fight.
The biggest one was the Sergeant Major. Their Sergeant
Major Hassan.
Yeah, dude.
I got a story about him. Yeah. But some of the guys, were garbage and stuff like that. But these dudes were getting killed all the time. It's not like us where we're like, oh shit, we're deploying, go to Afghanistan for 7 months, come home for like a year or whatever, and then prep and go back. They're there. They live there. That's their home, and they're not from the Sangin Valley necessarily, but they're always in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And they took a ton of casualties. I guess is what I'm kind of getting at, is people don't realize the amount of casualties they took and how that could have affected their morale, which is why some dudes were, what we thought were any good. Some of these guys just wanted, a lot of them didn't want to leave the army necessarily, but they did want to leave the Sangin Valley. Yeah. There were guys that had been in Sangin for 2 years, that had been at the FOB the entire time. And the fighting there just got crazy. And in 2013, when we were there, the Taliban were making a very deliberate offensive to come through and try to disrupt stuff, because we were the last advisor team in that area, and then we were going to be pulling out. So they wanted to come through and mess stuff up before we got out of there.
Yeah.
And I remember we were on one of the most memorable fights we were in. We were at Shamsher Do, and they were firing at us from the tree line to the south. Yeah, from the south. And it's the same one that we always took contact from. And while we were there, we had gotten there was an Afghan mission going on to include the company commander and like a platoon of guys were out.
Yeah.
And we pulled in, and it was just mayhem. Like 6 of their dudes got killed that day, including
the platoon commander.
Yeah, including their company commander was killed that day. I remember that was the time Combat Camera was out there with us. Yeah. That was his first time coming out with us. And I remember going down, he was down, there was a group of guys getting ready to go out as a QRF to try to rescue their dudes. And he was going down, taking photos of them and stuff. And this is the Afghans. And he's down there by himself. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to walk down there just to, guardian angel, kind of make, you always want to have an extra guy there. This is all during the blue or green on blue and stuff like that, incidents, stuff like that. So I went down there, and there was an Afghan soldier carrying an RPG, and he had an RPG and a 203. He had a M4, or not M4, but an M16 with a 203 on it. And he's like, hey, 203, I need grenades. And I'm like, dude, I don't even have a 203. Yeah. Like, my rifle doesn't have one. And obviously Combat Camera didn't. Yeah, but he kept asking us. He was like, hey, we need grenades. I need grenades. And
grenades are like 40 mic.
Yeah, the 40 millimeter grenades for the 203. So that, for those who don't know, that's the grenade launcher that's mounted underneath your M4 rifle or M16. And we didn't think anything of it. Well, these guys push out, man, and they weren't even to the tree line, and they were started taking casualties and were pinned down. And I know it really affected that Combat Camera guy, because we came back they came back, and the linguist, I was talking to the linguist. I was like, hey, what's up? We were talking. He's like, hey, you remember that guy that was asking about grenades earlier? We're like, yeah. He's like, yeah, he just got killed. And the Combat Camera guy was standing there, and you could tell he was like, what? Like, I was like, dude, that's just how it is, man. Like, there's nothing, I told him, I'm like, don't think about it, man. Like, it's nothing, us giving him, because he felt bad because he was asking for grenades. And he's like, well, what if that would have, and I was like, you can't even, like, don't go through what ifs, or you're going to drive yourself crazy.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, that was a pretty serious firefight. That was the one, too, where the Afghans, our Afghan National Army guys, were shooting off that SPG-9, the recoilless rifle, which was miserable for us because they wouldn't tell us when they would do it, or they'd be like, hey, we're going to shoot it. So we all get down, and we'd wait for like 5 minutes. Like, what are they doing?
And then we'd get up, and then they would shoot.
Yeah, you'd stand up like, what are you guys doing? Then boom! So the anticipation was just horrible. And then we had that guy that was trying to tell us that there was Taliban in the compound on the other side of the FOB. He's like, hey, he was like, hey, shoot a grenade into this compound. And we're like, why? And he's like, there's Taliban in there. And we're like, dude, we didn't see anybody go in there. We're not going to shoot a grenade into the compound.
So I think this is the thing I never really understood. Part of the reason why I think Shamsher Do was always under fucking perpetual attack. Anytime they took contact, they lobbed fucking mortars into the closest village.
Yeah, I mean, they were surrounded by it. There was buildings.
Yeah, dude. They fucking would just lob mortars.
Yeah, yeah.
Every single
time.
This
guy, yeah, they would just shoot. They'd be like, we only have 60 mortars. We can't do this. Yeah. And then they would start shooting. Instead of shooting at legitimate targets that we were trying to tell them to shoot at, they would just start popping rounds off at nothing. But this guy was like, hey, there's Taliban in here. And we're like, dude, we're not shooting a grenade into that until we see the enemy. And that's when he was like, well, he told the linguist, he's like, if the Americans aren't going to help us, we're going to kill you and the Americans. And the linguist came over and told us that. What was his name? Do you remember? The little dude, the Tiger Team guy.
Zap.
Yeah.
Zap.
So we gave Zap, the linguist, a pistol. Yeah. We're like, Zap, here's your pistol now. Like, take this pistol and keep your eye on that dude. Because now we're like, what the hell?
We're all up on the roof, like fucking.
And in the guy's defense,
yeah,
6 of their dudes had just gotten killed.
Yeah.
And they expected that the Americans were going to come in and that we were going to bring in, hell and fury on the enemy. But unfortunately, at that time, the thinking was that, yeah, we were there, we were the advisors, and we're there to support them, but every means necessary had to be used by the Afghan National Army before they'd bring in American assets, unless it was, especially like a medevac. They wouldn't even medevac guys unless it was life, limb, or eyesight.
Yeah.
So we were kind of limited on what we could do for them, and they weren't very happy about it. And like I said, he apologized later. I remember he apologized. and we watched that building because we're like, if someone's in there, we'll definitely shoot it. We watched that building, and a woman came out with like 3 kids. And that's the only people we saw come in and out of that building. So I was like, that's why we don't just fucking shoot at buildings, man.
Yeah.
And so that was one firefight that I'll remember just because so many dudes were killed. And I mean, that dude saying he's going to kill us. And Zap was talking shit to the Taliban on the radio.
On the radio, yeah.
Our linguist, he was a good dude. He was a Tiger Team guy before. He became a linguist to earn more money. But he would, the Taliban dudes are using regular walkie-talkies, basically, like longer range walkie-talkies.
ICOM chatter, he picked it up on ICOM chatter, and he could just fucking, basically. So that was like one of the reasons why the ANA in that area were upset, because they were trying to recover their platoon commander's body. And then I remember specifically that basically the insurgents in the area, one of their captains or whatever was like taught like on fucking like two-way radios basically, and I think they know that we can pick up their chatter, but on two-way radios like talking about like what's it called, like mutilating like the platoon commander's body basically.
Yeah.
So I think that was one of the reasons they were also like just like super upset, but
I mean rightfully so.
Yeah, well, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
No reason to threaten us. I mean we're there to help, but I completely understand. The first sergeant at that PB. The ANA first sergeant at that PB, up until that point, had been super nice guy, super welcoming and stuff like that. And then I think our relationship with him kind of changed after that, because they wanted me to get aircraft in. So I finally he was like, hey, we need aircraft. But they were shooting mortars and they were shooting that SPG-9. And I told him, I'm like, I can't bring helicopters here until you dudes stop shooting the mortars. And we were going back and forth, and I had air scheduled already. I'm like, my air is supposed to check on at this time. Like, I need you to stop shooting the mortars. And he's like, no, we got people dying out there. And I'm like, I got it, dude. I got it. But I can't help you with air unless you stop, because I don't know where you're shooting. Your dudes are just kind of popping rounds off everywhere. So he stops his guys from shooting the mortars. And then I get on the radio, and I'm like, hey, say status of my aircraft. And they're like, hey, they're delayed 30 minutes. And this is after I'm going back and forth and arguing with this first sergeant. He's super emotional, and he doesn't want to stop firing mortars. And I basically make him stop so I can bring in support. Then I have to turn around and go, hey, man, sorry, the aircraft's not coming. You guys can keep shooting mortars. Jesus. And I was just like, dude, it's rough, man.